Welcome into episode 66 of the Two Pad Stack podcast. I'm your host, Ace. Back at it again. Alongside me today is not Jake Reiser. Jake, I don't know what you were thinking taking some time off. I can't believe you. You've been so consistent and reliable, so you disappoint me this week. But it's not a solo show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not by myself. Back alongside me once again. Burge is back, baby, and it's just a two-man show again. So you're gonna hear us bicker about a lot of shit just like we used to. So welcome in, buckle up. Burge, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's going great to be back again. Talk some puck. We had a nice good week for the Bruins this week for the most part.
Yeah.
So maybe a mostly positive show. We'll see.
Maybe. How about those Kansas City Chiefs, huh? Knocking out the Bills again.
Yeah, we started off on a positive note and we went right to the negative side.
Yeah. You love it when the Chiefs win, don't you? I had some guy in my work call this morning saying, I'm not a Chiefs fan, but I really am glad to see like greatness. That's why I want to see the Chiefs win. I want to see Patrick Mahomes just be greatness because I haven't seen greatness. I was like, you already saw greatness. You already had it. Why do you want another one? Tom Brady had to play against the league. Mahomes has the league with him. Like, what is this? Like, come on.
I am the biggest Buffalo hater, as I'm sure that you know and our listeners know because I've talked about it on here before. I was circling the wagons for the Buffalo Bills last night. And, of course, I decided to root for them and they let me down, which karma, I guess you could call it, right? But that city was just – I would hate to be a sports fan from that city, man. The hockey team is trash. The Bills just can't seem to win. 4 losses in a row to the Chiefs of all teams. And I never thought I'd say this, but I'm rooting for a team from Philadelphia in the Super Bowl this year. I have to. I have no choice. I can't stand the circus that comes with that Kansas City Chiefs team. The refs, Taylor Swift, the whole 9 yards. Can't stand it.
Yep.
Somebody's got to put them in their place.
Right there with you. I hate Philly as well, like Flyers and Eagles fans and everything like that. But I was honestly pulling for the Commanders. I wanted the Commanders to go and punch their ticket to the Super Bowl and take down the Chiefs. But obviously they couldn't stop Saquon Barkley in their run game. But hey, we're not a football pod, but we got to at least talk about the big game that's coming up here. So we'll go ahead and pivot there. I got to hope that Mahomes doesn't get it done. But Bruins hockey, baby. Bruins hockey. It was a little bit of an interesting week for the Boston Bruins. It was a good opportunity to rebound, but they were playing against some good teams this week. Some teams that were in the playoff picture, some teams that made a big trade, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But before we kind of do that, let's just take a quick gander at what the old schedule looked like for this week for the Boston Bruins. So it all started off on the 22nd. That was Wednesday, and that was on the road against the New Jersey Devils. And I had my some concerns. I had my I definitely thought that this was going to be a game that the Boston Bruins would be challenged, but I thought that about the Florida Panthers game as well, and they managed to pull that one out. And I thought that this would be a good opportunity to see what the Boston Bruins are truly made out of. And holy smokes, they looked like they were made out of Swiss cheese in this game. So they end up falling pretty significant. What was the final score in that game? Like 5-1 or something like that?
6-3 was the final on that one. 6-3.
Didn't have.
I'm sorry. No, you're right. 5-1. I was looking at the game before. 5-1.
Okay.
5-1. Sorry.
5-1. Sorry. No worries. Bruins come out actually strong though. They come out strong and they get the first goal of the game thanks to friend of the show Morgan Geeky. And everything's looking up and coming. Everything's good. And for some reason, it felt like they just stopped skating. They decided, hey, we've got a lead now. And if we just keep that same level of effort that we had before, the rest of the game's just going to come to us and we're not going to get counterpunched at all. No way. Sheldon Keefe's Devils just came out flying. Were you able to watch that game in its entirety, Burge?
No, and I caught the highlights in that one. That one was a tough one for me to catch on in real time there. But you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Like, team took their foot off the gas once Geeky had the first goal there, and we're starting to see a little bit of the team that we've seen quite a bit throughout the year where they just play down and then they end up getting burnt. The goaltending didn't help them out in this game. It was tough.
Yeah, I mean, the second period was where it really fell apart, right? I mean, the Devils had 4 goals in the second period. So, I mean, it feels like a lot of times this year the Boston Bruins team can have an okay start, maybe a little lackadaisical, but they're still getting some goals past the goaltender, even when they probably shouldn't, according to the advanced stats. But it seems like when the goals go against the Bruins, they just seem to be coming in bunches this year. Like, it's not like, oh, here's one goal at the beginning of the period, here's another goal at the end of the end of the period. It's like, oh, they got one. Oh, they just got another one the next shift. 4 shifts later, oh my God, there's a third. The game's already out of hand. Like, and at that point, they just kind of check out and they just go through the motions. So that's a concerning trend, and that's definitely something that happened in this game.
Absolutely. And then, you touch on the penalties, the power play goals that occurred in this one. Can't win games when you're giving up 2-3 power play goals a night, especially when you're the middle frame, you're getting absolutely dominated. That's a very, very concerning factor that played into this one. And, we'll get into the games in the rest of the week, but cannot do that and win in the NHL. And, that'll contribute to my take on my dud at the end of this when we get to that segment in this podcast.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, the penalties, the discipline, it's just got to get better. They got to know that their PK isn't strong enough to bail them out. It's not like previous years, like in 2011, where you could just bully and thug your way to a PK, and you've got Seidenberg and Chara out there to just stifle 90% of the offense coming your way. So it's a different world. You're down Lindholm, you're down Charlie McAvoy. Not that either of them are ever at the caliber of Zdeno Chara, but they're still top pair defensemen in this league. You can't trust, and I love Parker Wotherspoon. He's a great 6th D-man, 7th D-man. He's proved himself to be very serviceable in that. You can't trust Parker Wotherspoon and Brandon Carlo. Okay, I'm going to go on a tangent here. What the hell is going on with Brandon Carlo this year? I love Carlo, and I think he's a great leader on this team, and he has a role in this team. But he's widely regarded as a defensive defenseman. I think that's fair to say.
Oh, yeah.
And he's not good defensively this year. Just awful decisions, not clearing the puck when he should be clearing it. Like when we are being forced to watch Nikita Zadorov being deployed in a top pair role, I need Brandon Carlo to be that safety blanket, and he's not being a safety blanket right now. It is just infuriating to watch.
He's always struck me as a very streaky type defenseman, where he'll have these streaks of time where he's shut down, and then he'll have these other periods of time where, like right now, he's leaky. And I remember when he was younger, and you're like, this guy's going to develop into a stud defensive defenseman in the NHL. And don't get me wrong, he's a very good defenseman, but he is not ascended to that spot where, he was pinned when he was a prospect coming out of the draft, 10 years ago at this point. But yeah, that's you need him to be that kind of that shutdown defenseman. We already know that he's not really a top physical defenseman out there. We've seen it in past years where he gets pushed around, but he was always solid and sound. And if you have that happen, it's not a recipe for success when 2 of your top defensemen are injured.
Yeah, I wonder if it's maybe a self pressure type situation. He's putting too much pressure on himself because he does consider. I mean, he is the second longest tenured Boston Bruin on the roster right now, behind only Brad Marchand. So perhaps he finds that burden of responsibility on the defensive side for leadership to fall on his shoulders, and maybe he's overthinking the game a little bit, trying to do too much, trying to be like a Charlie McAvoy and create some offense. That's not your game. Just play your game, Brando. Get back to just the basics here. So I'm not going to be here to bag on the guy. This is just an observation, and it's not, like I said, Zadorov is very, used to be to blame for a lot of these dumb mistakes as well. You don't think of Jordan Osterley as being a reliable two-way defenseman. This is just a piecemeal decor right now until Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy are back. And when those 2 guys are back, this team's going to be in a much better place. So to further recap the New Jersey Devils game, now that I'm off my tangent here, both goalies get in there. Neither of them look tremendously fantastic, but I can't really even blame them that much because the defense was it was like a turnstile back there. The Devils were so fast, and the Bruins weren't doing their goaltenders, either one of them, any favors.
Yep, that and they are elite goaltenders, but if you're not getting good defense in front of them, then they're only going to bail you out so much.
You heard it here from Burge that Jonas Korpisalo is an elite goaltender.
He's playing very well this year, exceeding expectations. Don't make me go back to that discussion we had when that trade happened. Don't make me do it. That's time for another day.
Moving on. I'm incredibly down on this Boston Bruins team after that game. I'm even in my Discord here. If you didn't know, we have a Discord. Come join us, chat some Boston Bruins hockey as it's happening. Love to have you. Well, I'm in the Discord and I'm like, fucking blow it up. They're done. They're cooked. Trade them all. Trade Frederick. Trade Marchand. Get picks. And what do? They have the Ottawa Senators in town who are sitting there waiting for them as they're playing the night before. Zelda's fighting upstairs. That's cool. They're sitting there waiting. And this is the team that the Boston Bruins just choked away a 2-goal lead in the third period in the last 5 minutes of the game, too. So I'm like, okay, the Bruins couldn't do anything to stem that tide before. What makes me think that they're going to do anything close to that? And they just played yesterday. So here we go. We're going to go on another losing streak here, and they're going to look like shit while they're doing it. It's time to trade some assets, whatever. And what do the Bruins do? They play a fucking stellar defensive game. Just a pristine defensive effort, and they get a 2-0 shutout. And that was Jonas Korpisalo in that
elite
shutout.
Elite Jonas Korpisalo.
Collecting that against his former revenge game, maybe? I don't know. It seemed like it, maybe a little bit. So, other notes about this game after the Bruins got the 2-0 dub. It was an extension of David Pasternak's point streak. He collected a goal and an assist. And much different to that New Jersey game, the penalty kill was excellent. It was perfect in that game against Ottawa. So, any thoughts for the Devils game from you, Bursch? Or the Senators game, sorry.
I mean, just a polar opposite from what we saw against the Devils. A team, Jekyll, Hyde. You want to talk about that a little bit with that? You come out, you get the goose egg against a division rival. That's a perfect response to an absolute letdown the day prior. So kudos to them, because that's exactly what you want to see from your team when you have one of those efforts. It's all about how you come back from it.
Memory of an elephant, or goldfish. That's what it was from Ted Lasso. An elephant. An elephant never forgets, Ace, you dumbass. Memory of a goldfish. You just, it's gone. You just forget. You turn the page. Next day, new game. And that's what the Boston Bruins did. They did a great job here in this game, and I was pretty happy with that performance. I do have to say I love it when the Boston Bruins play the Senators right now, because it is old style, old time hockey. You've got a scrum after every goddamn whistle. You've got Brad Marchand grabbing Nick Cousins by the throat, bare-fisted. I don't know how he didn't get a penalty for that. I don't know.
Just the fact that he took his glove off and stuck his hand there, the intent there.
Oh, I got to shout out Lauren on Twitter, because she's like, I'm just gonna say it. Me and who? And she posted the picture of Marchand grabbing Nick Cousins by the neck.
That is the perfect meme for that. Perfect.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a good game. I enjoyed it. Good job by Jonas Korpisalo. That's what you need to see, right? I mean, we talked about it before on previous episodes with Jake, and I talked about how maybe a reason for Jeremy Swayman's slight slip up in performance this year has been, historically speaking, Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark have always had a competitive rivalry, obviously collaborative and a great relationship, but these are both two star goalies, and they put pressure on each other, and nobody was ever the definite number one starter. And now Swayman has been anointed that guy, and he hasn't had that pressure on him. So having a goalie like Jonas Korpisalo, who can come in here and actually put a performance like that up, can kind of make Swayman go, okay, well, I might not be guaranteed the next start. I got to actually get in there and lock it in and kind of have a little bit of a anxiety about my position. It's not so set in stone as maybe he would have imagined, but maybe that's contributing to it, because he has rallied a little bit in the last month or so. I think Jeremy Swayman's stats have been more in line with what we kind of expected going into the season. So one final game of the week, and that was quite an interesting one. Now, the Boston Bruins don't face the Colorado Avalanche often, obviously, with them being a West Coast team. You're going to see them twice in a year, once on the road, once at home. Boston Bruins have already faced the Avs. I believe they lost in overtime at Ball Arena over there in Colorado, which, what a wonderful arena name, by the way. The Ball Arena. Like,
you ever been there?
I've never been there.
It's a pretty sweet arena.
Nice. I've been to a bunch of them, but not that particular one. Do they call it the Ball Sack?
Well, it wasn't called that when I went. I went like a
It was the
decade
Pepsi
ago.
Center?
The Pepsi Center, yeah.
That's what I feel like I'd have to call it when I visited it. It was like, how's the ball sack? Are the seats comfortable? Or the concessions in the ball sack? Or is that pretty good?
Oh, you could go so many ways with that one.
Oh, the club level. This is the vast difference.
Oh my god. Off the rails.
The Avs come to town, and it is right on the heels, and we're going to break this down a little bit, of a massive trade, seeing Mikko Rantanen dealt from the Colorado Avalanche to the Carolina Hurricanes. And we'll save all the details for a little bit of analysis, but this is the first game that the Avalanche are going to be playing post-Rantanen. So it was going to be really interesting to see how the Avalanche kind of respond. And it's no secret. I mean, when the Bruins went all in and acquired, Bertuzzi, and they acquired Orlov, and they acquired Hathaway. Like, they were like, oh, this is like a really good team, and they just got better. The Bruins actually struggled a little bit after they brought all these new faces in. And it's no secret that it can take a little bit of time to reestablish chemistry, especially, a player like Rantanen, who's been an Avalanche their entire career. A guy like McKinnon who's been playing with him, that's going to be pretty different for them. And it probably is a little bit of a challenge. But I actually really like the package that they got for Rantanen. But I would say, Jack Drury and Martin Necas were probably one of the best Avs on the ice, but they didn't get it done. It was interesting to see Devon Taves, who is widely regarded as a top D man in the league, got lost in coverage a couple of times against that Pasta, Geeky, and Zaka line. And I mean, Geeky had a beautiful backdoor passing play from Pasta where he was just left all alone. He just snuck in through the coverage, and Taves lost him in coverage and just tapped it in backdoor for one of his 2 goals on the night. Friend of the show. What was your thoughts on that game, Birch?
It was a great effort by the Bruins. And, speaking to the Colorado side of things, I know we'll get into the trade in a little bit, but you lose a player of that caliber, you never know how the locker room's going to react to something like that. And, this kind of effort from the Avalanche side of things, you got to chalk some of that up to them getting basically a bomb dropped on them with their star player getting traded. And like you said, you touched on Taves, you touched on Necas was -3 in this game too. So like, there's a little bit of, chemistry that doesn't show up immediately. And when you have a good team and you make this was pretty much a classic hockey trade between the two teams. So you're basically just inserting new players into a lineup. It's going to take time for that to click. Great performance from Jeremy Swayman in this one as well. The friend of the show continued his tear. You love to see it as a Bruins fan. Maybe a corner's turning here a little bit. Maybe they're going to finally start getting their groove after getting embarrassed earlier in the week. They got an opportunity here to really build on this, going down the stretch of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was really good to see Jeremy Swayman do that. I mean, that's a tough team to play against. Like, that is a team that can pour it on just like the Devils did. They have that speed, they have that skill. It's a very fast team. And I mean, it looked like through the first 2 periods, I was like, oh my God, this team cannot skate with this team. Like, the Boston Bruins look like they are a squirt team playing against Bantams right now, and not on the size side of things, but I mean, just the skating ability, it was pretty staggering. But, Swayman kind of was able to withstand the storm there, and he was able to, control the rebounds well, is something I noticed in this game. He didn't have a lot of, loose rebounds or badly placed rebounds that I saw maybe at the beginning of the season. That could be attributed to a little bit of rust, that lack of training camp that's been well documented, that kind of stuff. But I thought Swayman had a really good, solid command of his crease in this game, and that went a long way to helping the Boston Bruins secure this. And it was only poetic that at the end of this game, that top line worked together, and they were able to get David Pastrnak in alone to get that empty net goal to secure it there in the last second. So really, really pleased. It was a character win, I think, for this team against a desperate Avs team, but a reloaded Avs team that was looking to prove that they still want to be one of the top contenders in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touch on Swayman. That's exactly the type of performance you want to see after your counterpart goes out and throws up a shutout. Like, that's the type of response and competitive push you want to see from your number one goalie. When your backup goes out there, gets a shutout, go out there and have another game of yourselves. Yeah, I know he didn't get a shutout in this one, but you're not going to get shutouts every time you take the ice.
No.
So having that type of performance is very encouraging to see.
And I also want to acknowledge the fact that the team, they didn't give up nearly as many shots as they have been as well recently. The Boston Bruins had Swayman had 3 consecutive games of 40 plus shots against. They only had, I think, 28 against him in this game. And against a high flying offensive team, that's a manageable number. Now the Bruins only had like 15. They were still pretty well outshot, but at least it was, decent enough systemically. I mean, you give Swayman only 28 shots against, chances are he's going to give you a good chance to win. And that's what he did in this game. So pretty happy with that. So that recaps the week that was. I will share, Jake Reiser mentioned it on the previous episode going into this week. If the Bruins can get 3 out of 6 points, he'll consider this week a success. They did that. They got 4. They got 4 out of 6 points, which is not bad at all considering the teams that they were playing against. So moving on. Let's just kind of jump around and look at some other stuff around the league. We'll start with mainly Bruins related stuff. But taking a look at the standings, Bruins briefly held the 3rd spot in the Atlantic before this short little hiatus that they have. Obviously the other teams in the league, they don't sit around waiting for the Bruins to play, so they continue to play their games. And the Bruins currently find themselves sitting in a wild card spot. They are still, like we said last week in the Bubble Boys episode, they're still Bubble Boys, and they're still going to have to battle tooth and nail for every little point in the standings right now. And, Montreal, Columbus, and Tampa Bay are right behind them. And Tampa Bay, if you're talking just by points percentage, Tampa Bay's ahead of them as far as I'm concerned if they win the games that they have in hand. So it's going to need every point matters. Every point matters. And that's why it actually, everybody knows this already. I'm preaching to the choir now, but like, that's why those games against Ottawa, not this week, but the previous week, those can't happen. You cannot give up these points on the table here, because that one extra point would put you in a lot better position against these guys that you're battling for this wild card spot, 3 months from now.
They have no margin for error. They have no margin for error at this point. They started off the season slow. They dug themselves a hole, and they have no margin for error. A lot of these teams have games in hand on the Bruins. Detroit's another team that, they're still sitting 5 points back in of the Bruins as we record this episode here, but they have another 2 games in hand. So they win their 2 games. You're talking about a point difference here. So every point matters for the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, exactly. David Pastrnak was named the NHL's first star of the week today, after he led the league with 8 points this previous week. 3 goals and 5 assists. So that is a good week for Pasta. And let's be honest, right? The production wasn't there at the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be, I don't know if he's healing, coming off of whatever was banging him up or whatever. He seems to be rounding back into his form, and he's looking like friggin' Kucherov with the passing, and Krejci out there with the passing lately. He's finding Geeky alone in the back door countless times. And, I was screaming at him at the beginning of the season, like, especially when Geeky wasn't scoring all those opportunities. I'm like, stop passing it to Morgan Geeky and just shoot the goddamn puck. Like, you are the best shooter on this team. Please, for the love of God, shoot the puck. And I feel like he's gotten back to like a better combination of that for him. He's shooting the puck, and he's getting some good goals off the rush and everything like that as well. But he's also finding Geeky, who has a little bit of a scoring touch right now. And he's cooking right now. So
they need him to play at an elite level, this type of level, if they're going to continue to make a run at the play. He has to be that guy.
Have to. Other news around the Boston Bruins today was announced by the Bruins that Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy return to practice. They are wearing regular jerseys, so they're not non-contact jerseys. So they're taking physical contact in practice. That's optimistic news. It doesn't sound like a return to the lineup is necessarily imminent. However, when you missed, I mean, Lindholm went down in November with that fractured kneecap, right? It's going to take some conditioning. It's going to take a little bit of time to get back to where he needs to be, and then, I think another reason why McAvoy isn't necessarily going is that he actually just welcomed his first child with his wife.
Welcome
Congratulations
to the
Charlie
club. Welcome
McAvoy.
to
Yeah,
the
dad
club.
mode engaged, dad strength. Woo! So he welcomed his son Reese McAvoy. So future Bruin, hopefully. But very, very excited and happy for Charlie McAvoy and his wife Kylie. And the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins is now a grandpa. So when you see him, just know he's an old man. Very, very happy for everything like that. So I can see Joe Sacco saying, "Hey, like, you're still nursing a tiny little bit. You look good out there, but take some time with the family. Enjoy the new baby. Help out your wife so she doesn't want to kill you." That's a thing.
That's a true tip. That's a
That's the thing.
true point right there.
But yeah, super exciting for that. And if they can get these two guys back, like everybody slots in perfectly again, and they can start to try to get those reps in and that chemistry back where they need to be before the trade deadline.
I know it's not imminent, but like, come on, guys, please get back.
Yeah, I mean, we're still at that point where the Bruins need to figure out what they're going to do at the deadline, right? Because they don't know. Like, if they're in that playoff position, you think that Jeremy Jacobs will authorize selling?
No way. Not a chance. Not a chance. Talk about that in a little bit.
Yep. Other news, non-hockey related. Selfishly, I'm going to share some personal stuff here. Those of you that are invested in my personal life, which you may or may not be, I don't care. I'm proud of it, so I'm going to share. Big shout out to my brother, who's a listener of the show. He and his now wife tied the knot on Saturday. It was so awesome to be a part of that. I got to go to the actual ceremony at Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Tremont Street in Boston. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous church. I was terrified as soon as I walked in that I would ignite on fire or like a brick would fall from the roof and land on my head.
I'm shocked.
I don't know. I was on my best behavior, and I will tell you that priest there, I'm pretty sure he thought I was actually Catholic, which if you don't know, I'm the opposite of Catholic. He gave me communion and everything, and he walks up to me. He's like, Ace, I just wanted to say you did an excellent job up here today as the best man, and I thought you were very peaceful. I'm like, very peaceful? Like, I don't think anybody's ever used that word to describe me. Peaceful. Usually I'm like the opposite of peaceful, like chaotic, whirling dervish. Like, no, I'm not peaceful, but I'm like, thank you, Father. I looked at my brother. I was like, is it okay to call him Padre? And he's like, please don't call him Padre. Don't do that.
You would get struck down. You would absolutely get struck down for saying something like that. Huge congrats to your brother there, though. That's awesome. Sounds
it
like
was
you had
it was
time.
a beautiful, beautiful wedding, and I was so happy to be a part of it. My girls were a part of it. My wife was a part of it. We were all part of the wedding party, and it was a great experience. And super happy for them. They just flew down to Mexico for their honeymoon, so
awesome.
Hopefully they have a great time. Other news, you guys know I coach hockey as well. Not like high-end competitive hockey, but mite hockey, baby, which is still hockey. And it's an important hockey because these are the kids that are just first starting and learning the game. It's all about teaching the game and retention and everything like that. So if you don't know, Amelia recently was added to a supplemental team. Amelia's my youngest. And so she's playing for my team, which I'm the head coach of, the Rochester Blackhawks here. That's a cross-ice team. And she recently joined a all-girls full-ice team as a supplemental team. So she's playing for two teams. And we're going down to Massachusetts once or twice a week now to play games in addition to our Granite State tournament or our Granite State League that we play for the Blackhawks. But just yesterday, I am a proud papa because she scored her first full-ice goal. It was a beautiful, power play goal on the rebound. The puck squeezed through the wickets of the goaltender, and she jumped behind him and jammed it in the net. And she hit the Yager salute to celebrate. It was
Oh,
it was
yeah.
fantastic. It was like a highlight reel. It made me want to go buy Live Barn just to go back to that game
Oh,
and
you
get that
should,
clip
man. You
just to go do
absolutely
that.
should.
So it was so exciting. And I have confirmation from Amelia that she's going to join us for one two-pad stack episode.
Let's
And we'll
go.
talk about her hockey experience so far. So stay tuned for that. That'll be a lot of fun.
Love the effort. Love the effort. Following up on the shot and making sure the biscuit gets home. Love that.
Exactly.
Can't coach that.
I yell that all. I do coach that. I do coach that.
Oh.
I yell rebound, and then there's a little stat I say way too much to these kids. I'm like, did you know 80% of goals come off of rebounds? 80%.
That doesn't look good for us goalies.
It doesn't look good. That's on the defense, though. That's on the defense, not us. Yeah. We made the initial save. Defense, get it out of there.
Yeah, Ace, I know you love kicking them right in front of the net, so.
As long as I get the first one, I don't care where it goes. I'm not an NHL goaltender. At that point, I'm going to sit on my ass. Like, I did my job.
I just flail out. At least make it look like you tried.
Yeah, do the starfish.
the Tim Thomas.
All right. Other Bruins news. We'll stop talking about my personal life. Other Bruins news. It was reported that from Mike Grinelli that friend of the show has not even had any contract discussions with the Boston Bruins since the start of the season. So I find that kind of interesting. It was alluded to me by a few other people that they talked briefly before the season and said, hey, let's see how this season goes and we'll regroup. But it was interesting to hear that there's nothing really going on there right now. And granted, he's a restricted free agent, so it's not like it's a hard deadline of July 1st and he just walks. But you'd think with the way he's kind of turned it on lately that there would at least be, worth a phone call or an email.
Well, I think even you can look back to last year. He was an effective player last year too. So I don't know why they haven't started. Maybe they have some sort of backdoor agreement that they'll just wait till the end of the season, like you said, to talk about it. But he seems like he is an absolute fit here for the future of this Bruins team. And if they don't re-sign him or they trade him, I'll be very upset to lose our friend of the show because I think he fits in with the Bruins culture perfectly. So obviously he had some periods of time earlier this year where he was kind of slumping a little bit, but players go through that. We know what Morgan Geekie is, and we're seeing the best of him right now. And I can't imagine the contract would be super, super stiff for the team if they start negotiating on it. So in my eyes, it's a no-brainer for this Bruins team to get this deal done, albeit after the season if it needs to be.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in agreement there. I mean, you also got to look at him. Like you look at Morgan Geekie and people are probably thinking, oh, this guy's like 31, 32, right? He's 26 years old.
Yeah,
he's a
26.
restricted free agent. He's young. Same thing I was saying about, Oliver Wahlstrom. People are so ready to throw that guy he's 24. Like these guys are actually young players. They're not just journeyman veterans that the Bruins are hoping like somehow turn into something they're not.
Right.
There's actual upside here. And I'm not going to, victimize or blame Don Sweeney for trying to find upside with, low risk, high value assets here. Not necessarily high value assets, but, low risk, high reward.
Low risk, high reward. Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially with a guy that's that young, 24, 26. That's like really young for an NHL player. A lot of these NHL players don't hit their prime until their mid to late 20s. So throw the dart at the board with these young guys, especially Wahlstrom, a high draft pick just didn't pan out with the Islanders. Why not? Local kid too, great story.
A mini one-on-one legend. You guys all know that. You're gonna be like, shut the fuck up, Ace. Stop talking about that. That's fine. All right, let's go ahead and tackle one other little bit of news. We already mentioned we were going to talk about it. We got to talk about the Mikko Rantanen deal. Mm-hmm. We got to talk about it. Like, that's a guy that I actually had penciled and circled for this upcoming offseason, especially with the cap going up $9 million allegedly. Allegedly, it's not locked in yet, but the Bruins need a desperate injection of skill up front in this upcoming offseason. And I'm looking at forwards. Obviously, the Bruins need a center first and foremost, but I was looking at Mitch Marner. I'm looking at Mikko Rantanen. I'm saying, hey, tell me what the hell you want money-wise, and I'll give it to you because we have a ton of turnover up front, a ton of cap available. And if we can sign a guy like that, that'd be amazing. So what am I doing? Selfishly, I'm hoping he goes and gets traded to a team where he doesn't like it and he goes to unrestricted free agency. So Colorado apparently has been in talks with his agent for a decent bit of time, trying to find a common ground, a landing spot, somewhere that they can get him to agree upon a long-term extension, because you don't want to just sign a guy like Rantanen for like 2 years. You want to get that guy locked down for long term. I mean, he's a 50 goal scorer, right? So apparently they had kind of like what the Bruins used to do with Patrice Bergeron, where they looked at their players and said, do you really think you're more important to this team than Patrice Bergeron? Basically, they did that with Nathan McKinnon's deal, which I believe is like $12 million or something like that. They said, do you really think you're more important than Nathan McKinnon? And Rantanen's agents were like, yeah, actually, we kind of think we might be just as important or more important. And these are the new market settings. The cap's going up. We don't think that we need to adhere to your internal cap structure. And Colorado must have seen the writing on the wall and decided, hey, there is no feasible path forward here to get a deal done. And instead of waiting like the Bruins did with Louis Eriksson, once again, not the same type of player, but the Bruins waited and tried to negotiate, and they weren't able to pull it off. And they decided to cut bait, and the Avalanche sent Mikko Rantanen to the Carolina Hurricanes, who are firmly all in now in this season.
Oh yeah,
firmly all in. They should have been all in the last 4 seasons, but that's a story for another time. And the Chicago Blackhawks get involved as a broker in this deal. So I'm gonna read the overall trade for our listeners if they haven't seen it yet, and then I'm gonna hand it over to you, Burge, to give an immediate, kind of reaction to it. So the Colorado Avalanche, the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Chicago Blackhawks completed a 3-team trade that saw Mikko Rantanen, who had 50% of their cap hit retained by the Blackhawks as a broker in this deal, and Taylor Hall go to the Carolina Hurricanes. In return, the Hurricanes send Martin Necas and Jack Drury, plus a 2025 second round and a 2026 fourth round pick to the Avalanche. The Blackhawks, for taking on $4.625 million of Rantanen's contract, send prospect Niels Juntorp to Colorado, and they get a 2025 third round pick from Carolina. So I'll hand it over to you in 1 second there. My biggest thing is, what are the Blackhawks doing here? You're retaining $4.6 million, and all you get is a third round pick. Like, what are we doing here? I'll go, Bursch. Go.
Oh, that's one of the points for me. I can't wrap my head around that. I don't know what the hell they're doing here. I feel like they could have gotten a lot more than they got for this type of retention. That is a lot of money to retain against the cap. Granted, the Blackhawks, we know what they are. They're not any good. They are giving up Taylor Hall, but Taylor Hall is a shell of the player he once was. That detail aside, I think that this trade makes a lot of sense for both of these teams. Obviously, the Avalanche were not going to be able to get a deal done with Mikko Rantanen going forward after this season. The guy's over a point per game player for the duration of his career, which is wild. It just seems like he is just a point machine for, at least he was for the Avalanche. It'll be interesting to see how he fits in with the new teammates in Carolina, to see if maybe there's the same kind of chemistry issue or what have you that we talked about when we were talking about the Avalanche. But the players that the Avalanche, I can never say his game right. Necas is a solid forward, and I think once the chemistry and everything settles down there, that he is going to be a very, very effective player for the Colorado Avalanche, playing with McKinnon and everybody else they have out there. That they I just think that it screams a fit to me. On the Rantanen side of things, geez, I don't want to be playing Carolina in the playoffs. I mean, that team is loaded, and we know that Carolina always has trouble getting out of the second round of the playoffs, and they have their old storm surge and their stupid celebrations after the game. I think it's the most ridiculous thing in hockey, if I'm going to be frank about it. But you add a player like that to play with a guy like Aho, and it's scary to me, especially being a fan of a team in the Eastern Conference and possibly having to go through Carolina in the playoffs. That makes me very, very apprehensive about the Bruins' prospects to make a deep playoff run this year if they were to run into Carolina at some point in the playoffs. But No extension was agreed upon as a part of this deal, which was very interesting. I think if that extension had been agreed upon, the return would have been a lot more in terms of any kind of cap maneuvering or anything. I got to think that maybe the extension wasn't signed because of the salary retention purpose of that, to make him fit under Carolina's salary cap. I haven't looked at their numbers, so I don't know where it sits. But Chicago bolstering one of the best teams in the league this year for next to nothing while giving up one of their veteran players. Now I get it. Chicago's not going anywhere. Giving Taylor Hall a chance, another chance at the cup by going to another contender. But I just, for a measly third round pick for that, I can't wrap my head around why they didn't get more. I don't mind them being a broker in the deal. Like, that's kind of where they're at as a franchise at this point. Get what you can get for something you're not using, I guess you could say. But for me, gotta get more than just a third round pick there. Like, you gotta. And I still can't figure out in my head why they didn't and why they didn't push for more at the end of the day.
That's the thing for me, is that it's not just the salary tension, right? They also gave up Taylor Hall.
Yeah. That's to me, that's wild. Like, Taylor Hall, I get it. He's not the same player he was. He's older. He's kind of heading towards the twilight of his career, but he's a veteran. He is a veteran player with playoff experience, was on the Bruins team a few years ago that was record setting, right? So, like, I can't wrap my head around why they didn't get more for even Taylor Hall. He's on a respectable contract, and you just brokered this type of deal for, basically gave them a better player to make their deep playoff run. Now, if Carolina doesn't get out of the second round this year, to me, that's gonna be wild. That's just gonna be wild for me. And I don't want to say I hope it works out for them. I love Mikko Rantanen as a player, but I'm not gonna sit here and say, like, I hope Carolina does anything, because I will never, ever, ever support a team that does that stupid storm surge celebration.
Bunch of jerks. That's what they're called, that, aptly. Let's go ahead and send it over to our sponsors.
This season, the Two Pad Stack podcast is proudly supported by two fantastic local businesses. First, we're going to give a shout out to Earth Eagle Brewings, where great beer meets great company. With locations in both Portsmouth and Somersworth, New Hampshire, Earth Eagle is something for everybody. Whether you're relaxing in their Portsmouth beer garden or enjoying live music and trivia at the Somersworth pub, you'll be in good hands with their craft beers, epic hot dogs, and much more. And don't forget, if you're into brewing your own beer, their homebrew shop has you covered in Somersworth. And when it comes to tattooing, there's no better place than Vital Ink Tattoo in Barrington, New Hampshire. The artists at Vital Ink are all about turning your ideas into tattoos you'll love forever. The team works hard to make sure every visit is comfortable, and their dedication to making your tattoo experience fun and relaxing is unmatched. Whether you're getting your first piece or adding to your collection, Vital Ink is the place to go. Special thanks to both of these sponsors for supporting the Two Pad Stack podcast this season. Be sure to check them out and show them some love.
And we're back. All right. So let's go ahead and jump in and talk about our studs and duds for this week. So I'm going to start off with mine first. I am going to start with Morgan Geekie is going to be my stud of the week. Friend of the show. I got to go with just geeks, right? So he had 3 goals. There's 2 against Colorado. And he had another one, I think, against the Devils in that game. So 3 goals for that game. For that this week. Geeks is my stud of the week. Stud of the week, I'm going to have to go with not a player, but actually some system stuff here. Just, I mentioned it earlier, the discipline of this team is just not where it needs to be. We're taking a ton of penalties, putting ourselves shorthanded. It's not where it needs to be. So that is my stud and my dud of the week. Bursch, let's throw it over to you. Let's get some, unless you want to answer or add on to anything for my studs and duds.
No, I'll go right into my stud. It's a pretty obvious one. David Pastrnak, star of the week. Like I touched on when we were talking about him, like this is the player that the Bruins need. They need this version of David Pastrnak down the stretch run for them to get back into the playoffs and go in the right note. If you don't have that level of David Pastrnak, it's going to be very tough for this team to accomplish that goal. So keep playing the way you are, David, for this team to make the playoffs. Now, my dud is going to be a little bit of a contrarian take here. Just based on the season as a whole and the way that this team has played, I hope that this team is not giving us false hope at this point. They've played very well, but the way the Bruins management is set up, they may see this and be like completely pivot and alter their course at the all upcoming trade deadline. I don't want them to dupe management into thinking this team is something that it's not. And we know they're a bubble team. They're going to be right fighting for that wild card spot at the end of the day when all said and done. I just hope it doesn't trick the management into making a move that will not benefit this franchise in the future years to come. And I've kind of gone on a little bit of a record here. We're saying like I would support I don't want to say a complete blow up, but a blow up of the roster in hopes that they can gather some assets to build towards the future. And that's not me saying that I want them to become the Chicago Blackhawks or the Anaheim Ducks, where they have to go through this long multi-tool rebuild. I don't think that they're bad enough to do that. They have too many young, good pieces locked up to long-term contracts. But we've been talking about this, it feels like ad nauseum for years with the culture of this team, and that maybe there needs to be a shakeup. Now, you can argue that it's the players in the locker room, like the leaders, Brad Marchand, etc. You can argue it's obviously they've made a change at coaching this year. Could be, clean up the entire coaching staff and bring in a completely new, system, mindset, everything. And then you have the front office, which I think was where everybody's gearing towards on this. And that would be where I'd start with making the change. So I hope that that if they're going to play this well, that they continue to play this well through the end of the season to make at least at worst, a semi-deep playoff run, winning a playoff round, and seeing where things go from there, and that they're not duping the management into thinking, hey, we may be able to either stand pat or add. And the last month, March comes around and they start going back to what they were earlier in the season. That's my biggest fear. So my dud would be don't trick management. Please don't trick management. If you're going to play this level, please, please, please continue it all the way down the stretch run.
I'm going to be against that. I think that the Boston Bruins need to, if they identify a player that truly is a good fit for this team, not just for this year, but for the long term, and it costs futures to do it, this is the team that you're going to want to, invest in. The Bruins, I mentioned it last week. I'm going to rehash the same thing. We have the foundational pieces. This team should be better in all sense and purposes. Last offseason should have been an opportunity for Don Sweeney to go out and get a guy that could address the areas of need for this club. And obviously, the pro scouting staff dropped the ball. Nikita Zadorov's not who they thought they were. Elias Lindholm is not who they thought they were. Both good players in their own ways, but not what they casted them for. They did not spend the assets wisely. But you have foundational bedrock here. You have Charlie McAvoy as your defenseman to build around. You have Elias Lindholm or Hampus Lindholm as defensive bedrock to build around. You have Brandon Carlo there. Really good defensive players you can build around. You have Jeremy Swayman in net. Another foundational piece. You have David Pastrnak up front, foundational piece. We have foundational pieces here. It's not time for a retool or a rebuild. It's time for a retool. You go out there, you spend the money, and you get players that fit your system that are younger and things that can work out long-term here. But you can't get, just cast-offs constantly, because there's a reason why the majority of these players are being cast off. You look at a guy like Mikko Rantanen, a player of that caliber that finds his way on his way out, but he's still an elite player. Those are the guys that you go out and you spend all the assets on and get that. So the Bruins need to go ahead and find somebody of that caliber and then continue to build on this core. And if they're able to do that, I'm going to be okay with it. I'm okay with them buying at the deadline. But other than that, Trent Frederick, guys like that, guys that already have one foot out the door, sell them, get rid of them, be done.
I just said I'm not for the full tear down rebuild. You got to retool it, but there is a culture thing in that locker room that needs to change. In my opinion, it needs to change, and whether that's Like, I'm not advocating to trade Brad Marchand the way I was a year and a half ago, but like, he's a guy. You change the leadership in the room, and this is all hypothetical that they're going to go back to what they were. If they're going to continue this ascent, then maybe you do buy a little piece, but you also need to recoup some of those future assets because, in my opinion, this team's not going the distance. I mean, obviously you get to the playoffs, anything can happen. And in hockey, it's not like the other sports where favorites win more often than not. Like, anybody can go on a run and deep in the playoffs. Look at the Florida Panthers a couple of years ago when they came into Boston, knocked off the record-breaking team, went to the Cup final. But like, some point, like, you got to have this mindset, and the ownership's not going to let him do it. So it's probably all for naught that we're debating this, but like, I want to change. I want to change. And to me, that starts with front office and the locker room. They've tried cycling coaches in and out of this locker room, mostly the same core players, and it hasn't netted the results of a championship. So those are the two constants that have stayed. I think the Jacobs have made it very clear that they're very happy with Cam Neely and Don Sweeney with how they've invested in them and gave them. I mean, Don Sweeney's been here, what now? 10 years? 10 years he's had a chance to, build a cup winning team. Should have got it in 2019, but they didn't. So 10 years, that's a long time for the front office to be there. And, something's got to change for this team to be a championship team. And yeah, right now a retool is definitely the way to go, but there's maybe 3 players on the team that I would really, really critique a move if a move came from, and the fact that I don't necessarily really want them traded at this point. That's McAvoy, Pasternak, and Swayman, because those you got your forward, defenseman, and goaltender locked up long term. They're still in the prime of their careers, young, and somebody came to me and offered me a buttload for Jeremy Swayman. See ya. That's me. But I've been on that bandwagon for a long time.
If you had Allmark, sure, but you don't. Who else are you going to get?
But again, this is again me being hypothetical, saying this team's not going anywhere. The Bruins do very well finding goaltenders. I think we've well established that here on the podcast. So I wouldn't necessarily hate it. He is young, so like, I want to give up on him and all that. But like, you
heard it here first, folks. Burge wants to trade Swayman.
You're really, that's not what I said. You
just said, hey, I wouldn't be opposed to it if somebody came over and offered you a boatload for Jeremy Swayman.
Everybody in there, and everybody has a price. Everybody has a price. No team is going to meet the price to acquire somebody like Pasternak, McAvoy, or Swayman, but everybody has a price at the end of the day. And I'd love the controversy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if Gretzky can be traded, anybody can be traded. So I hear you. Let's take a look moving forward, the week that will be. Tomorrow, when you're listening to this podcast, hopefully it's Tuesday. When you're listening, that is going to be January 28th. Boston Bruins are on the road against the Buffalo Sabres. We talked about that briefly earlier. Good opportunity to solidify a little bit, wild card positioning up against a divisional rival. After that, the Bruins are hosting the Florida Panthers on Thursday the 30th, and that's going to be an interesting one to watch. I know that those two teams definitely do not like each other, and as a Boston Bruins fan, I will tell you that I do not like the Florida Panthers either. So it transcends just the players on the ice. So I'm going to look forward to that one here. It'll be interesting to see how the Panthers rally and bounce back from that disappointing loss to the Bruins previously. And then we've talked about this already before. One of the biggest surprises in the league, the Washington Capitals, and Ovechkin's back in the lineup now. Boston got absolutely smothered last time they played the Capitals on the road at Capital One Arena. The Bruins are going to be facing them on February 1st in Washington at Capital One Arena again. So it'll be interesting to see which Jekyll and Hyde version of the Boston Bruins we're going to see in these games here, especially that Florida and Washington game. Any thoughts on the upcoming schedule, Bersh?
Gotta get 2 tomorrow night, or when you listen to this tonight, in Buffalo. That's a must. 2 points there against a bad team. And then I think we're going to really find out a lot about where this Bruins team is. They're coming off the hot week, really tough matchups, one at home, one on the road against two really good teams. So yeah, the Jekyll and Hyde thing could be definitely in play there, but I think we may actually learn something out of those matchups if they're gonna continue to play the way that they played last week.
Once again, if we're going to be bubble boys, you got to get at least 3 out of 6 points here. At least 3 out of 6 points if they're going to keep kind of just treading water here. So I'll take Jake Reiser's advice for them for this upcoming week. So any closing thoughts before we wrap up this week's episode, Burge?
I just want to say it's great to be back talking hockey with you, man. I know we've been MIA for a bit. I'm really happy to be back chatting puck with you. It's always a good time. I love bantering with you and doing all that, and looking forward to the next one. And I'm still sore from my playing yesterday. First time I've been on the ice in 4 months. I'm still sore. I caught a puck right on the inside of my thigh. It's got a nice little bruise there from that. Played with a bunch of old timers, so it was a slower game, and it was like I still got a mark on my leg from it. But it felt great to be back on the ice and back into the hockey groove, and looking forward to seeing what the Bruins can do. Maybe my contrarian takes will finally take off for once.
I doubt it, but we'll see. Yeah, it's been great having you back, buddy, and we'll hopefully get that on the schedule more often here, and we'll obviously have Jake back next week, hopefully as well. So, thank you all for those that tuned in today. Happy to have you guys on as our listeners. We appreciate your listenership. As a reminder, we do obviously have our affiliations with Iron and Steel Threads. So if you guys are ever looking for some cool hockey swag to wear, some apparel, they actually give a portion of their proceeds back to making youth hockey affordable for families that need help. You can go on their website and use promo code 2PADSTACK10 to save 10% off of your total bill there for your cart. Additionally, we are still partnered with our friends over at SeatGeek. You can use promo code 2PADSTACKPOD to save $20 off your first order over there. So once again, thank you for your listenership. Thank you for your support. We can't wait to keep driving into all things Boston Bruins and New England sports and all that good stuff, and talking to you guys about what's new, what's next with the black and gold. And until we talk to you guys again next week, we'll catch you then. Peace.